Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026 episode of The Marco Dure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and our truths thrive. Lots lined up for you today, folks. You'll enjoy each and every one of my articles for you that I got just for you. You'll be more informed than anybody else around you. Believe me when I tell you that. Listen to this first story that I want to start off today's program with, though. You'll love this. It says right-wing pundit Tucker Carlson, who made his name famous on Fox News before he was fired 3 years ago, has now said that he's leaving the Republican Party. Now, this is as he diverges further from the GOP establishment, simply stating on the Can't Be Censored podcast that he's out. And if I'm out, then I think a lot of other people are out as well. Yeah, absolutely. So there's this bifurcation going on in the Republican Party between MAGA and these so-called America Firsters. And there's people that can't seem to understand where they stand on these things. Do they follow what President Trump says? Is that MAGA? Is that America First? Is that even based in the Republican values of which the party was founded back in 1854? So we've got to ask ourselves a question. Where do we stand and what do we stand for? That's the big question. And I think a lot of people are confused about this. Now, the sycophants that will fawn over anything President Trump says, for instance, Trump will come out and say, you know, we're bombing Iran. Everyone will clap like seals. They love it. They can't get enough of it. We're putting on new tariffs. Everyone clap. They have no idea what they're talking about. They never ask the questions. Is the war legal? Is there a reason for the war? Or are we just happy because President Trump is doing it? And we trust that he'll do good by us. Same thing goes with the tariffs. Most of these idiots that support this have no idea that a tariff is a tax on them, the consumer. And it's always been that way. And again, this is one of many different examples. Obviously, we elected President Trump because we want him to keep us out of wars. We want him to get control of the economy yet again, secure the southern border, remove illegal aliens from the country, of which they have no right to be here, fix the voting process, which again, he's trying to do. And by the way, Trump isn't bad on all these issues. Again, you know I disagree with the war 100%. I said that before the war began, that I was not in support of it at all, any type of invasion of Iran. And I stand by that, and I've proven to be correct on this. But now we're getting some big names coming out saying we're breaking with the Republican Party. Now, what does that mean? Carlson wanted to say, I don't know what I'm going to do, but at this point, how could I or any American voter support a political party that's not loyal to the United States? That puts the interest of a foreign country above its own citizens. Now, of course, he's alluding to Israel, of course. And by the way, I don't disagree with him on that. I think he's absolutely correct on that. Look at our foreign policy. It's completely controlled, especially in the Middle East, by the Israeli government in AIPAC, right here in the United States. And you're told to shut up and love it and like it. We've got to do this for our so-called greatest ally. Again, which I have yet to find any evidence for that, just so everyone understands me on this. So this begs the question, though, if Carlson's leaving, and by the way, he said he's not going to vote Democrat, he's not going to support the Democratic Party. But what does that mean for the future of the Republican Party? Does that mean he sits this one out? Does that mean he waits till someone gets in that he agrees with again? What does that mean? Does it mean he'll just not vote for the president or in the midterms? What does this mean? Where does this take us? And we've got to start asking ourselves the question because lots of Americans feel like Tucker Carlson. Republican, Independent, Democrat alike. They don't like this war. They're not happy with the progress of the economy. By the way, again, a lot of the issues stem from what the Democrats did under Joe Biden, 100%. And by the way, we can go back to COVID too. Again, you know, I disagree with President Trump on that as well. I thought he had no right, 2 weeks to slow this, 2 weeks to do this, give it another month, take the shot. I didn't like any of this. It was a very dark time in American history. And we know that the bigs got bigger, the small businesses went away. It certainly didn't help them. And of course, we know that certain things were essential, that were deemed worthy by the government, really? You talk about free commerce, free market capitalism. How do you say that Walmart is essential, but the small business in your community is not? How do you say that going to a liquor store is essential, but going to church is not? You got to go have church outside. I wouldn't do it. And I wouldn't do it again if we were forced to do it. I said, I'm not going to partake in this. I'm not going to have mass outside. I'm not going to sit outside like there's this grave threat around us. Again, I'm not going to do stuff like that. And I'm not going to fall for it again. Actually, I never fell for it in the first place. Thank God. But why would we want to be goaded into this yet again? We lost so much with COVID, starting at that point, 2020. You all know that I read an article for you the week before. We lost 5 to 12% of our GDP from 2020 to present day. 5 to 12%. That means the economy is contracting, folks. It's not getting better. Now, we have a lot of work to do, and we knew that when we elected President Trump. We've got lots to work on. There's lots to fix in this economy. But we're not fixing it. That's the problem. We're hyper-focused on Iran and Israel's interest and not our own interest. Instead of putting troops in the Persian Gulf, let's put them on our southern border. So they can obviously secure the nation, protect our sovereignty. That's what we want. That's what we need more than anything right now. And again, look at Europe. Look no further than Europe if you want to see what the United States will look like in about 10 or so years. If we keep this up, if we allow the illegal invaders to stay in this country. And by the way, we haven't gotten mass deportations as well. There's lots to criticize Trump on. Yes, on some issues, he's done a very good job. And by the way, one of those good jobs he just erased with this war, which again was bringing down the cost of energy, which was alleviating a lot of the stress in utility bills and what have you, price of the pump. That was all going down, and we were happy about it. That's why we elected him. But there's so many people now that are, again, like Tucker Carlson, just are totally disillusioned by what Trump has done. And again, if you had told me this in 2024, that Trump would be doing this, I wouldn't have believed you. I'd say, no, there's no way he would do that. And the way he acts now, it's totally different than how he acted during his first term. Just the lashing out was always there, of course. But now what we get is lots of profanity, lots of these violent threats towards other nations. This talking of taking over Cuba, taking over Venezuela, taking over Colombia, taking Greenland. Well, we'll just use force to go get it. Bombing the blank out of Iran. Again, during negotiations. I would have never guessed anyone would act like this as President of the United States. But I guess I was wrong, folks. I guess I was. I guess a lot of us were. None of us saw this coming. But I do want to say one thing about this before we move on. We've got to understand something about this moment right now. We're at a watershed moment in the Republican Party. There's two ways we can go about this. And by the way, we saw the ouster of solid conservative candidates like Thomas Massie, again, who don't go along with the pro-Israeli lobby, PAC, and whatnot. Doesn't take a dime from AIPAC, okay? And they ousted him, right? There's no other way to say that. They ousted him from the party. They didn't like that he stood against that. He was the voice against that he brought things up that really you shouldn't be talking about. No, you should be talking about the Constitution when we're going to war. You shouldn't be voting against the war. We got to vote in line and lockstep with the president. This is the president's policy. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not how federalism is supposed to work. That's not how separation of powers is supposed to work. You are supposed to follow the Constitution, not just one man. By the way, if President Trump has a good policy, I have no doubt that Thomas Massie would follow it. He votes for the Republicans 91% of the time. So if we just want a rubber stamp on everything, which again, I guess a lot of people want, that's not how Congress is set up. That's not how our political system is set up. We elect leaders to represent us. That's why we have people in the House, in the Senate. That's why we have a president to lead, to enforce what the Congress is doing. But we should have representation. We shouldn't just have a rubber stamp. Representation, not a rubber stamp. That's what we want. That's what we should want. And we're not getting it right now. We're having Congress keep punting to President Trump, whether it be tariffs, whether it be this war. They don't do a damn thing about the SAVE Act, which again is a good Trump policy, by the way. So while there's some good things with Trump, there's also some very, very bad things that he's done thus far. And again, the natural response is to be disenchanted with him. And I don't doubt that many Americans are. Very low approval ratings right now. He's got to turn things around. Now, I don't know if he can at this point, but he's got really until September to really make things go his way, if that's even possible at this point. But he's lost a lot of people. He's basically lost all of Gen Z that supported him. And of course, the millennials that supported him, the younger Americans. This is a problem. He needs them. He needs them very much. And he's not going to get them. We've seen them already turning to the likes of a Mamdani in New York City, a Wilson in Seattle, the Graham Plattners in Maine, people of that ilk. Disgusting people, awful people, do-nothing candidates, really. But what can we point to right now that Trump has done besides securing the border? I mean, that's one of his last great claims, securing the border. Because, again, the energy prices are gone. They're up 50% from where they were before this war in just a short span of time. We have inflation rising. So what are we selling to the American people as midterm election? That's a genuine question that we should have an answer to. Why should we vote Republican? What is the Republican Party going to do that's different than what the Democrats did when they gave us high inflation? Now, inflation has not reached the peak of it as it had did under the Biden administration. Don't misunderstand me. I mean, we saw in 2022 it was roughly around 12% inflation just that year. We know Edward Dowd, again, used to work for BlackRock. Very smart guy, said anytime you saw inflationary numbers under the Biden administration, you were really about 3 percentage points above that. So in other words, if you had 3% inflation, you really had 6% inflation. If they were telling you had 9.1%, well, you had 12.1%, at least. So we saw under the Biden years, we saw roughly, I'd say at least 25 to 30% inflation in just that short span of time. Destroying what we had in the Strategic Petroleum Reserves, again, when Trump actually built that up during his first term, which was great. Now we're depleting it yet again. So my question to you is, do we form a new party? What do we, as America Firsters, as people that follow the Constitution? Remember, I follow facts. I am objective. If something is a good policy, I will support it, so long as it follows the Constitution. If a war is necessary, I will support it so long as there's actually intelligence that actually supports the reason for it. And we follow, again, the Constitution. We haven't gotten any of that. Again, everybody that clapped for him in 2024 when he said no new foreign wars. He said that. We applauded it. We don't want new foreign wars. We don't want to be at war with Iran now. That's not why we elected President Trump. And by the way, we don't want to be in Ukraine either. He said he would have solved that on day one. It's still going on right now. We're still even allocating money for that particular war, not as much as we did under the Biden administration. But we gave hundreds of billions of dollars to a war which we could not win, a war that Joe Biden, Boris Johnson, on their own decided they wanted to keep this war going. And let Zelensky know he did not have to accept anything from Vladimir Putin. He can continue the war because we'll support him. NATO will support him. That's what the plan was. And look where we are now. By the way, I saw a report earlier today, too. Russia is gaining territory inside Ukraine as we speak right now. And I expect the offensive from the Russians will increase because a lot of Russians have had enough of this war as well. And they want it to end very, very soon. So what he should do is just completely take over Kiev. And that'll be it for Zelensky. It'll be over. There won't be any more room for fighting at all from the Ukrainians and their military. And by the way, folks, we've seen enough bloodshed in Ukraine. 2 million Ukrainians at least dead. It's unbelievable. It's disgraceful. This war could have been over in a month. So never forget who kept it going. Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of UK, and the wonderful, great, sleepy, lunch bucket moron, Joe Biden. Yep, there it is. Kept the war going, and now it's still going to this day, and Trump has not finished the war. Which really all he has to do is pull the plug on this. Say, we're not going to fund you. This is such an easy fix. Yet it still goes on. We cannot break up the Republican Party, though. I've got to be honest with you. Now, we could maybe sit an election out and say, listen, I'm not voting for this time around. Okay. What you're going to get is certainly not anything better than what we have right now, though. Let me tell you that. We'll go over that momentarily. But if you split up the Republican Party, let's say you formed a new party, and it was called the America First Party. I'm just going to throw a name out there. The America First Party. It's a name that sticks. People like it. Many people in the Republican camp definitely would like it. And the problem that results from that, though, is that if you break up the Republican base and you split it by a third and half, whatever it may be, you're going to dilute that ticket the next time around. Three parties do not work in any system like this. They never do. Again, go look at the UK right now. Look who's running the UK, the Labour Party. Look what a disaster they are. And, if we want the left to succeed, that would be a great way to do it. Again, we've seen this time and time again. When the Republicans, again, split the ticket, we saw this in 1912, which gave us Woodrow Wilson. Teddy Roosevelt ran opposite of William Howard Taft with the Bull Moose Party. Again, a Republican party, no doubt. But they split the ticket, and then we got in Woodrow Wilson. A complete and utter disaster, a trajectory that totally took down the United States. Again, if you look at the 1968 race, again, the Democrats split between George Wallace and who was it? Hubert Humphrey? I forget who even ran against Nixon. Nixon ended up winning, of course, in a landslide. Certainly the Electoral College, but that's how Nixon was able to get through all this, because, again, the Democrats are fighting one another. This is the problem. Again, we look at the 90s. Bill Clinton. Ross Perot, again, a Republican, conservative, running against George W. Bush in 92. Split the ticket. We get Bill Clinton. We get all the disaster with Bill Clinton. NAFTA. We get the removal of Glass-Steagall. All these things they did, allowing the FCC to remove regulations so that all these companies can come in and buy up the entirety of the market. Again, all these things, letting China into the World Trade Organization, all these bad policies, outsourcing of jobs under Bill Clinton may not have happened if we had Bush for a little longer, or if we had a Ross Perot running on the ticket as a Republican, not as an independent, in 1996. Or maybe Ross Perot wins both those. I don't know. God only knows if we get a Bill Clinton later on, though. That's the problem. But you probably wouldn't have had a war with the Iraq, Afghanistan. Probably wouldn't have had that. But then again, who knows? We can only speculate at this point. My point to you is, though, anytime you break up that party and split it into two, you are diluting that ticket. 100%. And we need to understand this. So if we want to continue to hand power over to the Democrats, that's the way you move on this. Or, hear me out here, or you can create a party within the Republican Party. What do I mean by that? What are the Democrats doing right now? This comes out of the National Review. Very, very, very important article. We have to understand this. And it says socialism is on the march. Now, we've seen in recent months, as many of you that pay attention to these elections, again, we're in a midterm cycle, members of the Democratic Socialist of America, again, a communist party. I call them all communists. They're not socialists. They're communists. Their end goal is complete control. And we've seen this in New York City. Dummy comes to mind. Seattle, we have Katie Wilson, again, another ignoramus. We saw what's taking place in Washington, D.C. We saw an actual member of the Democratic Socialist of America, Nithya Raman, coming back in full force after Election Day, when she was down by, 7 to 10 percentage points? All of a sudden, when the ballots keep flowing in just for her, and very few for Karen Bass, none for Spencer Pratt, who was right behind Karen Bass. I believe it was 2 to 3 percentage points, if I'm not mistaken, on election night. Concedes, then, of course, they figured, oh, wait, we got all these ballots for you. Or they just simply found them all. I think we know how that race all runs. And we know how Democrats run these elections in these blue cities and blue states. I don't know why the DOJ has not shut that down right away. But we saw then the LA mayoral race. We have Karen Bass, a devout communist. She was a Cuban sympathizer. The communists are already in this party, but they're not breaking up the ticket is the problem. Oh, yeah, they run as a Democrat, or they may run as a moderate. Look at Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, running as a moderate, and look what she does. Everything she does is like Gavin Newsom. You elected Gavin Newsom, Virginia. What the hell's wrong with you? Now, CNN data analyst Harry Enton He's the guy who always gets really excited when he's going over polls. It's like a joy for him, I guess. I don't even know. But what he found out was that the Democrat Socialists of America have a net favorability rating of plus 17 among Democrats. Interesting. Now, compared with just plus 4% for the Congressional Democrats, again, that's their rating on the party. But they're polling as a better brand, at this point, at least in the midterms, than Democrats in Congress. This is what's going on right now. So what you're seeing right now is the takeover of the Democratic Party, just as Reagan told us it would. This is where fascism and socialism and communism would go to. They'd go to the left because they're left-wing values. All of them. All three. Now, I know you've been wrongfully told that fascism is on the right. It's really on the left, actually. Obviously, when corporations and government merge together as one, yep, that's fascism, folks. We don't see that in America today? Absolutely you do. But here you go. We have Bernie Sanders, the great Bernie Sanders. Great old Bernie, right? And he was speaking earlier at these rallies in New York City for these ultra left-wing candidates that are running in these new congressional races. And like clockwork, Bernie Sanders goes on one of these tirades. And I have to ask myself, what does Bernie Sanders really stand for? We know he can get elected to office in Vermont. Okay, that's great. Bernie has enriched himself just by living in public office, never produced anything anybody wanted, never offers any real alternatives. Now, he does bring up some issues that are true problems. I won't ignore that. But his way to solve it never works. Why is that? Because he doesn't want it to work. None of these Democrats want it to work. Has AOC ever solved a problem yet in her, 7 years in office? What has she solved? What bill has she presented that has made life better in New York City, in her own district? Or anywhere else in the country, for that matter? Can anyone point to anything either of these two schmucks have done? Of course you can. But the progressive ticket, right? What's her name? Elizabeth Warhead, another one, always just chiming in on issues, never solves a damn thing. Yet she's been there for how long? At least 10 years now. Definitely more than Bernie Sanders has been in the Senate since 2007. What's he done in 20 years? Why are things moving in the wrong direction? Why are we still talking about income inequality? Or at least that's what he's talking about so many years later. Now, should this Democratic Socialist of America prevail, of course, in these elections, we're getting many more of these radicalized candidates into office, and that's exactly what Bernie wants. He wants these lunatics, again, that are not going to solve anything, to be in office that will vote the way he wants them to vote. This is the party of Bernie. And what a disgusting old party it is, let me tell you. Anyways, here he was at a rally, I believe it was last week, if I'm not mistaken. This was him chiming in on all the things you can look forward to if you elect Democrats. And by the way, there's an addendum I have to add to that at the end of this as well. We'll talk about and break it down. Let's take a listen to the great Bernie Sanders.
But what separates progressives from establishment Democrats is we don't just moan and say, oh, isn't it terrible? We are prepared to take on the insurance companies, take on the drug companies, and bring about a Medicare for all, single-payer system, which guarantees health care to every man, woman, and child. And when we look at the economy, we're not just saying, well, gee, prices are rising, that is true. But we have got to have a minimum wage in this country, $20 an hour, that is a living wage. We've got to make it easier for workers to join in unions by passing the PRO Act. We can no longer be the only major country on earth that does not have guaranteed paid family and medical leave. This is the richest country on earth. We should be having the best public educational system in the world. The mayor is doing here should be done all over this country. Universal child care, make it free. No teacher should be making less than $60,000 a year. Young people should not be going deeply into debt to get the education they need. We need more doctors, we need more nurses. We want legislation to make medical school, nursing school, tuition free. The time is long overdue for the wealthiest people in this country to start paying their fair share of taxes.
He always ends with that. Fair share of taxes. Okay, Bernie. Yeah. That's everyone. So the people that create jobs, it's time for them to pay their fair share, folks. Right? They don't employ a lot of people, do they? Of course not. Why would they? So think about what he offered to the audience right there. Did he offer, we'll get new jobs? No. He didn't ever present any solution as to how we're going to get back to number one in public education. Why is it low, Bernie? Does Bernie want to explain to everybody why? I worked in education for 11 years. When you have a group of kids, again, these public schools are run by labor unions. Again, they're very big supporters of the Democratic Party. I never forget this. When I was going through a new orientation at a new school I was working at, one of the members of the board so gratefully told us all, oh, well, we could work with Sacramento. And I was thinking in my head, yeah, work with Sacramento. That'd be great. What do I need to say to Kamala Harris? What do I need to say to this candidate? I'm like, oh, yeah, here we go. Barbara, what was it? That was Kamala Harris and Diana doing to Feinstein. Yeah. What do we need to say to them? Oh, what can we do to make it better here? And I thought to myself, you don't need to throw more money at education. What you need are kids that value learning. And when you do not have that, you don't have a proper education system in this country. Like we once had, it was number one in the world. We had the best public schools in the world. And by the way, where I taught in California, back in the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, were number one in the country. It really was the Golden State, folks, in that time. Best public schools in the country, that means best public schools worldwide. That's in California. That's no more. California is now second to last. If that, they're probably the worst. Despite what Gavin Newsom tells you, of course. But the reason you have it is a couple different reasons why. Number one, you cannot bring in people that do not want to assimilate in the country. That's problem number one. You can't have that. Problem number two is you can't have kids that do not value learning. You could throw all the money in the world at them. If they don't value it, or if the parents continue to push their kids through without making sure that they're adequate at grade level to read and write and compute and understand everything, and they keep getting passed through, which is now the current way all across America. It wasn't like that when I was growing up, but today that's the standard. You could fail everything and you still get to go on the next level. How does that make any sense to anybody listening? Now, when you get into high school, then they can start to hold you back. You have to obviously make the scores. You have to make the grades. But everything up to that, you can just totally bomb everything and get there. How are you going to have a intelligent, prepared group of young individuals to make it through 4 years when you have let them fail everything beyond kindergarten? It's like 8 years of just totally bombing everything, not meeting grade level standards. So what do? You lower the standards. That's easy, right? You lower the standards a little bit, you get the kids to pass through. It's genius. It really is. And by the way, most of it today is just regurgitating facts that you've learned. Very, very seldom do you have teachers. One of the things I always did when I was doing my health unit, I had kids write essays. And they hated me for it, but hey, I don't really care because I got them thinking. That's what I wanted. But I had them take notes. We would break down the notes. I would explain things on my own to them. And by the way, I was giving them gold too. I wasn't just giving them nonsense. I was giving them real, actual information about health and well-being and quality of life and what have you. Because that's how I operate. I didn't just give them a multiple choice test where they just circle an answer and maybe they get it right, maybe they get it wrong. I want these kids to write to me. I want them to understand how to set up an essay, how to take information they've learned and apply it to their own lives. That's getting a kid to think. We don't have that seldomly anymore. We barely have that. But he talks about greatest education. Yeah, that's long gone, Bernie. Your party destroyed that. By the way, it was Jimmy Carter up until 1979 when he created it. We had the best public schools in the world. Now I believe we're, depending on what poll you look at, we're either 24th or 36th. Great job, Bernie. I think we did a great job having the Department of Education being ushered in. Needs to go away. And again, he talked about other things. Everything's got to be free. He uses the word free. Of course, that means taxpayer funded. Obviously, that means raising taxes. Then you got the idiots in the crowd continue to clap for this. Free childcare, free medical leave. Well, who's going to pay for it, Bernie? That means that business will have to raise costs in order to cover somebody leaving for an extended period of time. Now, of course, I would love for parents to be at home with their kids full time. That's what I would like to see. Should they want to? Should they be able to? I think that's the best way to go about it. But we don't have that anymore because now we need two parents to work. You all remember that article I shared with you last week. 52% of parents both work now. where it was, in the 1950s, it was 25% of both parents working. So we've near doubled now who's going to work and who's not going to work in some way or another. I was listening to Larry Johnson. As you know, I think Larry Johnson is a very sharp guy, and he's very brilliant. But what he was talking about the other day on one of his programs, he was talking about the inflationary rate. And one of the things he said, and again, I don't know how old he is exactly, but he said, where he was living in Kansas City at the time, his father worked at a steel mill. Right? Okay, worked a steel mill job. Okay, good paying job. Again, manufacturing. I like that. You all know that. But what he said was remarkable. He goes, my father worked a job at a steel mill. Whatever skill he had, whatever he did in the company, I don't know what it was exactly, but you can go to a job like that and you would be able to provide for your wife. And he said, my 3 siblings. So that's 4 kids and a wife and yourself. You're able to work one job full time and can afford a house. He said every couple of years he was able to purchase a new car. Again, you're at a time where inflation, the devaluing of the currency wasn't in place yet. Does Bernie Sanders ever talk about that? Ever? No, he never talks about it. He talks about taxation. That's what the whole purpose of what he was talking about was. More taxation. Whichever one, of course, claps on. But they don't realize, hey, you're going to be paying the higher cost to those companies that have to pay for that. And let me ask you this. Why only $20, Bernie? Why not make it $100 an hour? No, because even Bernie, as stupid as he is, realized if you had to pay somebody $100 an hour, I mean, either the business will go out of business, or you simply have to raise prices so much people are not going to afford everything. There will be economic turmoil to a T. But isn't that great? $20 an hour now. $20 an hour. Okay, Bernie. Why don't you work for $20 an hour then, you schmuck? What the hell have you done? Nothing. Guy doesn't know how to do anything. He didn't even know how to He didn't know how to hammer a nail straight. Bernie said that's how useless Bernie Sanders was. But I'm sure he learned radical communism when he went to the University of Chicago. And of course, he just sells that to you. Same old talking points. Never offers a real plan. Just taxation. Same with little Bobby Reich, sitting over there in Berkeley. In his tenure as a Berkeley professor, God knows why. But this is the same thing. Everything is just about more taxation. If you just tax people more, everything will be great. Everything will be wonderful. Not self-autonomy, right? Not lowering taxes. Not allowing businesses to operate on their own. Not making it more opportunities for people to start businesses using their skills. Entrepreneurship. Has Bernie Sanders ever echoed any of these words? Now, again, I'm not denying. I think he's right. We should have the best public education in the world. Absolutely. We should have things that are affordable in this country. Absolutely. But all their policies are destroying all that. He talks about free health care, free this, free that. Everything's free. First of all, nothing's free. And since you took over the Affordable Care Act, the cost of health care in this country has skyrocketed. It's gone up. Well, depending on which plan you're on, it's gone up 50, 60%, which you were paying back in, 2011. Now you're paying almost double that now. Nothing's cheaper, nothing's more affordable, but that's the part of the program. Which brings me back to my first point. You cannot bring in people into a program or into a system like we have here in the United States where people can go utilize the emergency room, whatever they want, for free, because they can't be turned away. That was done under the Reagan administration, again, under good merit, but again, what was the end result of it? You have people here that are illegal that go to the ER and get, a checkup that they need. And they can't be turned away, so they get their checkup, they walk out. But somebody's got to pay for that checkup. So who pays the checkup? It's the dunce that comes in with his insurance card. Oh, well, you got to pay us $1,000. That's going to cost you $1,000 now because, hey, this guy left without paying a damn thing. Got to keep the lights on. We got to pay the electricity. Got to pay the staff. Got to pay all this, buy all that. It costs money to run a hospital, Bernie. It doesn't cost zero. Yeah. Try explaining that to him in AOC. But this is what the party wants. This is their position. They want to just tax you, and then, of course, what you get? Less and less. By the way, we can look at the models of universal health care versus our system before Obama completely wrecked it. We used to have the best quality health care in the world. And by the way, when you have the best quality health care in the world, you pay more. That makes sense, right? That doesn't mean it's unattainable for people to get. Everybody has access to the system. But when you make things more and more unaffordable as time goes on, right, as inflation rises year after year after year and the value loses its purchasing power, well, then you have problems on your hands. Again, I blame the Fed for a lot of these policies, these monetary policies we find ourselves in. But really and truly, we got to look at this democratic socialist nonsense. It's a bunch of garbage. Really, what they're selling you is communism, folks. Here's some of their radicalism, though. I don't want to just hone on this too long. I have other issues we got to talk about today. But earlier this month, its leadership of the Democratic Socialists of America, this is what they just issued. This is their updated platform. Get a load of this. Calls for abolishing the U.S. Senate. Amazing to me. And that's why AOC doesn't want to run for it. But hey, at least Bernie can retire, right? Defunding the Pentagon, so I guess we wouldn't have any defense if we were invaded or what have you. Offering universal amnesty to illegal immigrants. There we go. They have to get their voting block in place, naturally. Transferring the ownership of major corporations to the public. Now this goes into what Bernie Sanders wants to do. He wants AI companies to, I guess, pay people. Which, by the way, I'm not opposed to that if they're going to steal our information and sell it to people. But you're going to force a private company to give major contributions to the people? All the people? How's that going to work? It's almost as stupid as saying, yeah, we're going to allocate $1 billion for everybody in the country. Yeah, when you have 340 million people in the country, how much are you actually going to get from it? Absolutely nothing. And they want to replacing the president and Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen by and subordinate to the Congress. So in other words, they want the Iranian position, it sounds like. Right? They have a board of expertise. The board of experts then goes in and they nominate who the supreme leader is. That's how it works. And that supreme leader would then pick their cabinet, pick the people around them. Oh yeah, that's what they want. That's what the Democrats want. Look at this. Also includes a demand that police budgets be cut to zero. So no police. Amnesty for all illegal aliens. We have no defense system. We have no Senate. We have no representation there. And let's see what else here. What other ridiculousness do we have here? Oh, look at this. Justified the platform by pointing out that President Woodrow Wilson once called for drastically amending the U.S. Constitution. Yes, he did. He hated the Constitution, that schmuck. And he hated the country, too, and he destroyed it. By the way, he lamented about that after the fact. Too late, of course. But they also said that the Democratic Socialists of America proposed changes would advance a vision of transforming the functions of the American state to allow for the implementation of socialism. Oh, yeah. So they want to change they hate the Constitution, the Democrats, especially the communists. They hate it, except when it's convenient for them, of course, and they use it. But if it gets in their way, then they hate it. Okay? They hate it so much, and they want to alter it. They want to get rid of it, essentially. That's what it comes down to. So really, when you look at these illiberal values, again, none of this is liberal at all. None of this is liberating. None of this has to do with any liberty, too. This has to do with complete control. This is what contemporary progressivism is. It's a disease. It is communism. And we should avoid this at all costs. So when I ask you the question at the beginning of the show, where do we go from here? Does the Republican Party split? I say no. The Republican Party simply needs to move to America First candidates. And those candidates evolve. They grow. We need Thomas Massey's, okay? Thomas Massey's not perfect, but we need Thomas Massey's. People that stand up for the Constitution, for the rule of law, for fiscal conservative policies. We're not just going to be spending like insane people, which is what we've done for quite some time. We've got to get away from this, folks. So while we hear Tucker Carlson's leaving the party, at least for the time being, if we form another party, it has to be within the Republican Party. We can't just have it somewhere outside of it. It's never going to work out. And then again, the Democrats will continue to take power. And you know exactly what that will lead to. We just heard Bernie Sanders. He just read this lunatic's platform on the Democrat Socialism of America. None of this is going to work out better for the American people. Now, what's the cause of this bifurcation? What's the cause of this break in the party? Tucker Carlson was once a loyal supporter, campaigned for President Trump. What changed? And a lot of it comes down to the war in Iran, which, again, many people broke on. They didn't like this. We know Joe Kent, for instance. He obviously left his position at the head of counterterrorism. Tulsi Gabbard has stepped down. Again, she's claimed that it's because of her husband's cancer diagnoses. Again, I seem to think otherwise. Well, I don't deny that's true, and she wants to focus on that. I think she realizes she's not doing anything, and she's probably being pushed out of her position already. Therefore, why not resign? Why not just get out right now? Yeah, Joe Kent did the same thing. A lot of the people that were against this war in the government, most of them are on their way out, or are already out as well. They've resigned their position. Not a good thing, again, when you're in this echo chamber of people that simply want this war. Big problem. So we as America Firsters, right, we're saying to ourselves, why are we in this conflict? This is not America First. This has nothing to benefit the United States. We're not in any grave danger. We can look at the intelligence. And then we look at where we are in these negotiations, which is another big problem. And again, it just reeks that we are kowtowing to what Israel's demands are. That's what it's all about. This is from the AP Wire. It says here that the United States and Iran were now in dispute on Tuesday over whether Tehran had agreed to allow UN inspectors of its nuclear sites. Right? J.D. Vance came out and championed that the other day. And as officials negotiated over how to permanently end the war in Iran, a plan emerged to break the shipping bottleneck through the Strait of Hormuz. Again, that's why Trump signed on to the Memorandum of Understanding. He looked at it and said to himself, okay, I'm going to be the one that is the reason for a global meltdown. How is that going to look good on my presidency? Not going to look good at all. So I think he understood, like, yeah, I got to get something going here. Something's got to get moving. We can't continue doing this because it's not benefiting us. This just looks bad now at this point. You know, he's claimed he won, 5, 6 different times. We defeated the Iranians. Okay. I'd like to know why the Iranians are the ones setting all the negotiations and all the deals, by the way. Now, this disagreement now, though, comes from, again, the Iranian side over nuclear inspections, as Iran's president met with Pakistani mediators and technical teams from the U.S. and Iran alike during talks in Switzerland. And the UN agency said on Tuesday that a plan was underway to evacuate 11,000 stranded seafarers through the strait, vital to global energy supplies, and which Iran had blocked after the U.S. and Israel launched the war on February 28th. So here's the thing. Here's the thing about all this. We got to understand something with this. If the Iranians are coming out now and saying, listen, by the way, we're not doing this with you. We're simply not going to reopen the strait right now. Again, it's semi-open right now, as last I heard. Again, it could change in the next 10 minutes. It can go back to being fully open. Then later this evening, Trump could say something on Truth Social, and it can close again. Again, it goes back and forth. It's like every day, it's like you wake up and you decide, is the strait open or closed? We don't know. So we know that some things are going through the strait. As of right now, most of them are Iranian ships, by the way. But listen to what J.D. Vance said just the other day about this. Again, this very topic that now we're excited about having UN inspectors going into these facilities and figuring out, again, are the Iranians building a nuclear weapon? Take a listen.
Number 3, and this is probably what we're most excited about as Americans, the Iranians have agreed to invite IAEA inspectors back into their country. That is a major milestone for the American people and the first step in permanently denuclearizing or permanently ending a nuclear weapons program in Iran.
Well, obviously that it's not true if the Iranians are coming out saying, no, we never discussed this. I said this to you before. I said the nuclear talks will come after everything else. So if they can't get through point 1, which is reeling back in the Israelis, there is no talk about nuclear weapons. There is no talk about inspections. There's no talk about enrichment. None of that's on the table yet. So J.D. Vance can announce this, and again, everyone's happy about it, but we already had this in the JCPOA. So if we have IAEA inspectors going in, great. We already had this. And what are they inspecting? I thought all that enriched uranium is buried under the ground. of which we obliterated everything inside of Iran. Apparently not. Apparently they were weeks away from building another bomb, somehow. Yet there's no intelligence to back it up. Now, the IAEA has not responded to a request for the comment. Again, they would be the ones that would be notified about this. Again, if the Iranians are saying no, I tend to go with what they say on this at this point, because a lot of what we're hearing is smoke and mirrors at this point. We're trying to come out and say, look, we've got this leverage now. Well, again, we had this before. And up until June 2025, they were going in and still inspecting these sites. Even after we left the JCPOA, the Iranians were still allowing the IAEA to go and inspect these sites. Now, they were accused of lying to the inspectors about where what was in the facilities and whatnot. Okay, whatever. But we have no negotiations if things are going to work as they are. If we're going to continue to threaten the Iranians, we're not going to have a deal. And by the way, if Israel decides to stay in Lebanon, which again, Netanyahu has chimed in on that one. He's saying exactly just that. By the way, President Trump was asked about this too yesterday evening. And this is what he had to say. The reporter asked him about what is Israel going to be doing. Are they going to stay or are they going to go? We're told they're staying. And this is what Trump had to say about that. Take a listen.
This is another beauty. What's this one?
Well,
it is a real beauty.
Earlier today, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his forces are not leaving Lebanon. That is a sticking point.
Who did he tell that to you?
He said it publicly in Israel.
Well, we're going to take a look at it.
Well, what would you do to make sure that he doesn't
Well, I'm not going to
sabotage the
tell you
deal?
what I'm going to do, but it gets solved. I'm a problem solver. I get problem solved real fast, including with Bibi. Go ahead.
Yeah, he gets problem solved really fast. Look at Ukraine. Look at this war. We can't even negotiate with the Iranians without threatening them amid negotiations or bombing them. That's how good we problem solve in the United States. So, what has Netanyahu said? That's what I say. I say, let's listen to the actual source. Let's not listen to Trump right now because, again, he'll tell us we got a deal, we're close to a deal, we're going to have a deal. Then we relinquish from the deals. We move away from the negotiation. We abstain from the negotiations. So what exactly is Netanyahu saying? This is what he said just the other day to the Jewish News Syndicate. You tell me if Netanyahu is going to leave Lebanon.
As long as we need to protect our people, we will remain in the security zone in South Lebanon. And the reason is perfectly understood. No country would be asked to do otherwise. Now, you imagine the United States. Across the border, you have thousands, an army of thousands of terrorists who pellet your cities and your towns with rockets and ballistic missiles and killer drones. They kill your soldiers, they kill your citizens, they kill your children, and they threaten them every day. Well, what would America do? Would it say, well, there's nothing we can do? Let's hold our fire? Is that what America would say? No. You know damn well what America would do. It would cross the border, create a security zone, kill the terrorists, and protect its people until the threat is removed. That's exactly what we are doing.
This guy makes it sound like he has no idea what he's talking about. In March, it was Israel that invaded Lebanon, not the other way around. The IDF was in this region. That's why they were attacked. Again, they were advancing north. That's why this took place. Why are they in a sovereign country? That's a question you have to ask yourself. Hezbollah lives in southern Lebanon. That's where they live. They are a faction in the government. They are a party of the Lebanese government. That's what they are. Just like we have Democrats or Republicans, Hezbollah is a political party. They also have a militia that fights off Israel's illegal invasion and occupation of southern Lebanon south of the Litani River. That's what they do. But now we're getting word, by the way, this is from Al Jazeera, even though I don't typically like to go to Al Jazeera. This is a true story, though, I have found out. So I will read this to you. And what they're finding out, though, is that Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has now discussed the de-confliction and a mechanism for the country with the United States, with Vance, and the Qatari Prime Minister. So even he is saying they've got to get out of this country. And this guy's really, again, we control very much what happens in Lebanon and of course, who is elected and what have you. But there was a phone call on Monday that focused on consolidating the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. The Lebanese president stated to the authorities that the hostilities between the pair has seen the Israeli military occupy parts of southern Lebanon, which, again, they have no business being in. Look at UN Charter Article 242. They don't have a right to be in these zones. Israel was not invaded, so therefore there is no self-defense, despite what you hear from Netanyahu. But what he wants to do is launch persistent airstrikes on he's talking about Israel, launching these persistent airstrikes on the country while Hezbollah attacks northern Israel. So when Netanyahu gets out there, he says things like, well, if they were bombing your cities and killing people and children, excuse me, you've killed 3,600 people, children alike, inside of Beirut. You bombed Beirut, which to my knowledge is not in southern Lebanon below the Litani River, which they want for a water source, by the way. That's another story, though. But he acts like he's not killing innocent people inside Gaza or Lebanon or the West Bank. This is happening constantly, and the world sees it because, thank God, I guess we have social media. This is the reality of the situation. And by the way, let me go a step further. You wouldn't have a Hezbollah if it wasn't for, again, Israel's illegal occupation starting back in 1978 in southern Lebanon. You wouldn't have had it. There would be no Hezbollah today if Israel lived within its borders. So when we get this rhetoric, oh, look, they're attacking us. Or, no, oh, yes, we'd go across the border, create a buffer zone, and fight them and kill those terrorists. I'm sorry, you killed 3,600 people plus since March of this year. So in 3 months, you've killed over 3,500 people. Let that sink in, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, is there any death toll on Israeli civilians? Hezbollah does not target. They target security zones and outposts like that, military installations and what have you. Yes, there are IDF soldiers that have been killed. Yes, there have been by Hezbollah. But when you look at the numbers, when you really add up the numbers between who Hamas and Hezbollah have killed go back to, I don't know, the mid-'80s, it stands at about, I think it's 1,100,000, roughly. I mean, again, it's awful. We don't want to hear about this. I mean, we don't want these to happen. But you have at least 100,000 dead in Gaza alone. The number is probably more likely 200,000. You already have 3,600 killed just in Lebanon, just in this small war that they find themselves in right now. And you're comparing that to just over 1,000 civilians? We're talking about civilians here. Israeli civilians. In the course of 40 years. Again, no one wants it. I don't want to hear that. I don't want that to happen. But we have to look at who is doing the aggression here. Who is in Gaza right now that shouldn't be in Gaza? It's Israel. Who is in Lebanon right now that shouldn't be in Lebanon? It is Israel. It's the IDF. This is what Greater Israel is all about. They want that land. Yeah, they can target Hezbollah, again, and claim that they're terrorists, of course. But, again, I don't understand what you would want them to do. This is a group of people that are fighting for where they live. This is their homes. In the United States, we have the right to form a militia should things get out of hand in this country. Does that mean everybody is a terrorist? Again, if Hezbollah was just lobbing missiles daily into Israel for no damn reason, of course we would condemn that behavior. Of course we would, 100%. But because it's Israel, then all of a sudden we just say, well, they can do whatever they want. They can take over land. They can tell, 1.5 billion people never to come back to their homes. By the way, though, I did get some word, and I don't know if it's true yet, but that the IDF was allowing people to come back to their homes in southern Lebanon. Perhaps that's happening. I don't know if that's happening yet, but if it is, maybe there would be some sort of peace talk between the two. But again, we know Netanyahu has never honored a ceasefire. They're supposed to be in a ceasefire right now. They're both, one is trying to advance on the other one fired back at them. It's a mess. Israel never honors a ceasefire. There's supposed to be a ceasefire in Gaza right now. We have over 1,000 people that have been killed since that ceasefire back in October of, again, 2025. It's ridiculousness. But we've changed the definition, folks. Don't worry about it. We changed the definition of ceasefire. It just means you don't shoot at them as much, according to President Trump, which, again, defies logic. Anyway, So it looks like Lebanon, they're fed up with this. They want this to stop. Obviously, bombing Beirut has nothing to do with Hezbollah because they're only in the south. So this has something to do with, of course, territorial claims, land grabbing. That's what this is all about. But they sell it to you as self-defense. There is no self-defense in this situation. All right, let's move on again. Now, why, again, is Trump all about this? Why did he all of a sudden come out there and say, listen, we need to have a memorandum of understanding. We need to stop this war. Bibi will do everything I want him to do, every single thing. He will do everything because I say so, because I'm President Trump. The problem we had with all this, and by the way, this is from Reuters, and I think, again, as I said to you in yesterday's program, he understands that the economy is in shambles right now, and it's only headed for more bad times, despite the falling gas prices per barrel that we're seeing right now. Again, I'm looking at West Texas Intermediate. I was looking at Brent crude earlier, and yes, they're in the mid-70s right now. They are going down. But that is not the end-all, be-all. What happens when we stop getting all oil to the U.S.? Because, again, we use about 20 million barrels of oil per day in the U.S. We only pump about 13.6. Again, we're a major producer of oil in this country. No questions asked. But even Reuters now is saying U.S. vacationers are barreling into peak summer driving season just as the gasoline market faces a supply crunch. How long have I been telling you this? How long have I been telling you this? Now, this was published on June 11th, but nonetheless, it's still very, very true. We're going to be starting to see domestic demand surging, especially with these fuel exports now threatening to strain thin inventories and send prices to the pump prices climbing. Absolutely 100%. I told you this was going to happen. We haven't seen the supply shock yet. And that's why Trump is talking about the bottlenecking. He understands, hey, if I don't get this straight opened up, we don't start getting oil flowing back to the U.S., to Europe, to Asia, we're going to have a global meltdown. How are we going to get things shipped across the sea to one another? How are you going to exchange commerce with each other? You're not going to do it. It's bad for the U.S., it's bad for the global economy. And everyone in the world is going to point at Netanyahu and President Trump. So if he wants to sink his presidency, this is a good way to do it. Because, again, he is the one to blame about all this. And, of course, Netanyahu as well. But now we're getting surging summer demand from American motorists, and that's not stopped, especially U.S. refiners from increasingly prioritizing lucrative diesel and jet fuel production. This is a big point right here. To backfill global shortages caused by shipping disruptions at the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the critical passageway obviously holds, again, the article is wrong here. It says a fifth. I say it's about a third. Roughly 31% of the global oil flows right through this region, and that's been effectively closed off since really the start of this war, with the exception of some Chinese, some Indian, some Iranian vessels shipping oil through. Now, we know some oil tankers, some 20 left the other day. Most of them were Iranian vessels. So there you go. But here's the problem with this diesel jet fuel crash. Both of these fuels are derived from heavy crude oil. We don't produce heavy crude oil in the United States. This comes from Russia, this comes from the Persian Gulf, and this comes from Venezuela. We don't have Venezuela working effectively as we should. That's why we had the CEOs coming in when we invaded Venezuela earlier this year, and they said, basically, this is uninvestable. Now, Trump didn't want to hear that, but that's what was said. This is uninvestable. I mean, we can't create a system that produces oil in the quickest way. This oil that comes out of the Aramco oil belt is really thick. It's almost like peanut butter, I've been told. It's that thick and dense. Now, it's got to be refined. And of course, once it goes through the refining process, which takes longer because, again, it's so heavy, then you can use it. But that takes lots and lots of refining. You got to put it on an oil tanker. You've got to ship it to the United States, to a refinery, usually in Texas or Mississippi or Louisiana. Then it goes through the system, and then you could use it afterwards. But this is where we get our diesel from, and this is where we get our jet fuel from. So which one is it? Which one do we get? Trump said we have roughly about 4 weeks supply left of this. And I think he understands, hey, if people aren't going on vacation this summer, if people aren't able to drive or fly to where they want to go, well, that's going to look really bad on my behalf. And they're not going to forget this come September or come November. Just believe me when I say that to you. And we also have to come back to the reality right now. Again, he waited far too long to end this war. What are you on, day 110 right now? Something like that. Just because the strait is opened up or semi-opened up or some vessels have gone through right now doesn't mean all of the refineries in the region are back up and running. Ras Laffan, excuse me, the liquefied natural gas refinery had an explosion the other day on Sunday evening. So that's down, I'm sure, right now. But all these other ones that have been offline for weeks now, or they have damage to them, this takes months to repair. This possibly even longer than that. So just because the strait is opened up all automatically and Trump says, well, we haven't seen ships flow through like this ever. Again, I'd love to see the evidence for that. But it takes a while, folks. That's my point I'm trying to make to you. This is going to take a while to get done. Get things back to where they were. It's going to take several months, if not longer than that. And you can mark my words on that one. But again, Trump has figured it out, though. We have U.S. prices now surging roughly 40% now since the war began. He's got to get those priced out. He's got to keep supply up. And we don't have the strategic petroleum reserves because they're not up and running yet. We're simply running out of it. And we have no more to put in there. What a great place to conclude today's show, folks. Thank you for being here. Make sure you're staying prepped with food. Anything you need to be self-sufficient. I got to run. Be good. Stay busy. God bless.